I was trying to run through the perfect.
Don't be perfect. Are you gonna be giggly too?
Hey guys, and welcome to the Raising Liberty podcast, where we'll be learning and sharing how to live and leave a legacy of freedom. Our goal with this podcast, our goal with the website originally was that we wanted to share the kinds of knowledge we were coming across on our search and quest that we thought would help other people. You guys have all experienced that. You learned something new, something amazing, something you never would have been told in your public school education or anywhere else in mainstream society, the news, and you just want to tell everybody else because you're just certain that they're going to share your revelation. Of course, that's not how it goes, but we're making this podcast to talk to you guys primarily. So you've already had a lot of these revelations. We're just exploring now content that we think has helped us push forward in our lives and take action in ways that we haven't been able to before. We want to succeed. We want you guys to succeed. We are avid listeners of Tom Woods, and he's been really great about promoting paths to success, paths to prosperity when he finds them. And so we've tried a couple of those, and we've tried a few other things along the way. But we've learned a lot in the process, and we'd like to share our process as it continues with you guys. Okay, so this is New Year's Eve when we're recording this, and it might be tomorrow. It might be the new year before we get it posted, because this is our first episode, and we've never done this before.
Yep.
But happy belated New Year's, guys. This episode is, not surprisingly, about New Year's and our tendency to try and change just because that number ticked again on our calendar. There's a few people it works for. Most of us don't give it a second thought because that's the kind of stuff that happens on a Friends episode. It's not real life. We really don't take, as a society, we really don't take New Year's resolutions seriously as a concept. You go back to work the next morning and someone might mention it once, and then you move on. Like, I didn't really do it, or I'm going to try and do this. But then, a week later, we're not talking about it anymore. And the fact is they didn't replace whatever habit they wanted to change with anything new. They didn't change the way they saw themselves or their habit. And so nothing changes. And, I think maybe I tried out a New Year's resolution once or twice in 30 plus years, So I'm not really into it. This episode isn't about connecting to people who are. It's about just reflecting on how you go about successfully setting a goal, something you want, and pursuing it, versus what we usually do, which is, it's almost like we're setting New Year's resolutions all year round. Everybody just thinking about what they want to do with themselves, taking a single step forward, and then taking the same step back the following week or 2 weeks later. And we've all done that, I think. So we've been consuming a lot of self-help this past year, and this is one reason why we decided we had enough ideas or observations to start putting out a podcast every week or a few times a week. A lot of it is about goal setting. It's about identifying beliefs in yourself. Some of you have read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I never finished it.
Yes, you did.
What?
Yeah, you did.
I don't remember finishing it.
You finished it before I did. You did.
I remember it being kind of a slog. It was good, but it was meticulous and tedious. And
I think you finished it, but you didn't finish it the second or third time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid I won't be able to call on that wisdom because I don't remember finishing it. But I know some of his observations that were good. We'll be talking along those lines of identifying beliefs, beliefs that limit you, and what you might replace those beliefs with. Other people who have discussed success and the principles of success, people like Jack Campbell and Earl Nightingale, Canfield. I keep calling him Campbell. Yeah, I haven't read much of him. Napoleon Hill is a great one. We listened to a little mini series where him and his dorky self sat down at a desk and
on
talked.
Netflix, right?
Yeah.
No,
Amazon.
Prime.
Was it Amazon?
Yeah.
And he it was about 14 episodes.
13 or...
And it was about like 5 or 6 minutes long.
Yeah.
No one of them was very long, maybe 10. And so we sat there, we took notes, and this is what qualifies us to teach you guys how to live. But my point is that there's commonality between all of their content, threads that you draw together. There's just some things you can't avoid if you want to change your course, or succeed where you failed, or view failure in a more productive way, or any of that stuff. And one of those steps is taking action, which we are coming to believe after all the self-help and self-improvement content we've consumed, that the taking action is the most important part. That's what we'll be focusing on for the most part. That'll be kind of a theme from episode to episode. We're going to have lots of different types of content, different subject matter, but when it comes to improving yourself and succeeding at whatever it is you want to succeed at, we'll be focusing on the action side of things. It's easy to get lost in your mind, lost in your head when you're talking about changing yourself. A lot of people like Covey have talked about dissecting what goes on in your mind when it's in like a resting position, and that's one form of meditation is stopping and breathing and catching those thoughts. And Covey talks about that in one of the earlier chapters about examining those thoughts, putting them under the light. And I was able to do that a little. I had a little success with that, and it's true that the self-talk is what some people call it. That's your subconscious feeding you on a loop everything that you already believe about yourself, and anything else that people add that you happen to agree with, that reinforces those beliefs. And once you put those under the light, you find they're not really rational, they're not really logical, and they should be discarded. And Covey tries to take you through a process, like a psychological process, that's not easy, though it's doable if you have the powers of concentration and the time, I guess, to focus. Like, I don't know, it's difficult to stop everything and just watch your subconscious work and try and listen to it.
It takes practice.
Yeah, I guess everything kind of does. Earl Nightingale talked about success from a framework of belief as well. He talked about it. He just said if you have faith, if you believe it will, that you can do something, you can do it. You can do anything, and that was what he said over and over again in the probably the most popular audio clip that he has on YouTube. So that's true.
Yeah.
And
The Strangest Secret.
The Strangest Secret?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that what that one was?
I think you're right. So him and
who?
Covey and the guy we watched on
Napoleon
Hill. I should I'm not. Names aren't as important to me. I apologize. All these guys, they're talking. It's good stuff, and they're speaking the truth. But there are other people who get it, I think, closer to the mark when they say that all of this is great, and it's nice to have those concepts floating around and plant those seeds in your head. But if you do enough of that, you're only proving that your idea of success is simply to learn about it. It's simply to continue to absorb information about what it might mean to succeed. You're a student of success, but you're not you're not an actor in the marketplace or in your own life. So what I've done by reading, this piece of material, that piece of content, listening to this podcast, watching this video, and I just keep doing that, is I've suspended myself in a kind of a classroom setting where I use that in place of actually doing the things I don't want to do, doing the things that I'm afraid to do, or like making a podcast. And at the end of the day, you have to act, because if you don't do that, you didn't do anything. You could say, well, all this material I consumed helped me prepare for that. But most people, that's not true. Most people consume that content until they lose interest and go back to their daily routine, which they were doing the whole time anyway. I've tried keto for on one of my paths to success. I tried developing board games a couple of different times in my life as a path to generating something that might have some value. I tried learning to program a few different times with a few different languages. That was pretty dry, and I didn't have the discipline. And discipline's another thing that we can talk about all day long without actually achieving anything. It's a fact. Without discipline, you won't build a new habit. But without taking that first action, without actually doing something, you don't have any experience to reflect on. You don't have anything. You haven't invested. You're investing time in a book or a podcast, like ours included, isn't going to bring you closer to your goal unless it's imparting knowledge that you then directly turn around and use. So that's going to be our angle most of the time. We might share some of the same stuff that we've learned along the way, but I hope that, and we'll be using calls to action to try and help you guys not fall into the same trap that we've fallen into, that many people fall into with this self-help stuff. They pay thousands of dollars. People will pay so much money, go to conferences, buy into programs, just to achieve something that they weren't actually ready to act on, and they just could have just simply acted on it, and that would save their money and done whatever it is they really wanted to do. So our hope is to share that kind of content, but in a way that incites you to action, that doesn't let you just file it away and feel good about yourself. That's not what we want you to do. We don't want to do that anymore. And so part of this podcast, certainly the Monday episodes, will be of a nature that they should call you to at least do one thing. When you're talking about new resolutions, it just happens to be New Year's, and we just happen to start our podcast on New Year's, but that's not our resolution.
No.
And that's not why we did it. We just have to act at some point, and
sooner better than later.
Sure, right? So when you want to accomplish something, you need to... One step you should take is figuring out if your dream is a good dream. This is something I read about in a book called 8 Questions of Character, where it suggested that we list our dreams. What are the things that we want? What are our goals? What's everything you've ever wanted to do with your life? And we've all had usually, more than one thing over the course of years, but you take those and you figure out how long have you been sitting on some of those. If you wanted to be a rock star when you were 14 and you're 29 and you haven't taken a single step towards that, or it's been a decade since you did anything with it, but you haven't put the dream to rest, then it's occupying a space in your mind that it shouldn't be. It's occupying a space in your mind that a real active dream could take. So if that was part of that book, was figuring out which dreams were dead and letting them go, and if which dreams were simply not being acted on, but were still active, were still something you wanted to do now. Is this something you want to take a step towards? So I remember the book also talked about what other attributes of a good dream versus a bad dream, but that's one of the main things. When you're setting goals, you could set any goal for yourself, and you can set a lot of goals for yourself, and you can bog yourself down really quickly. I listened to a podcast called Lead to Win, where a family, the Hyatts, father and daughter, one thing they say over and over again is that when you're planning your day, you should think about the top 3 things and list those, so that if you get those done, you had a good day. Whatever that means to you, whatever 3 things are most important to you. I think in their situation, they go to work every day. They've got a complex job with a lot of nuance. Leadership's really important. There's a lot of communication. What they do every day probably requires them to list 3 things they just want to get done at work. For us, it might be a little bit more difficult or elusive, or just a matter of choice. If your top 3 goals are to lose weight or get in shape, write that critical essay you've been thinking about doing, or and land a raise at work. If those are like the 3 things, finish a piece of writing, advance at work, and get in shape. Then doing one thing towards each of those goals a day might be an example of like what your top 3 list would be. But if you just have like one goal right now, that means you'd write 3 things that you can do towards that goal each day. And there's sometimes some things are more urgent or more important in the moment, and they might make your list. It would be a day by day thing. That's how the Hyatts talk about it, and it's a good idea. It's a good idea to write down what the next day is going to look like. The most success I've had with it was when I wrote down kind of a play-by-play. Like I narrated my next day, and it doesn't take much longer. Yeah, I use shorthand, just writing down, I'm going to do this right when I wake up, and then I'm going to do this, and then the other. And when I did that, I accomplished nearly everything in a fairly lengthy list compared to my usuals, versus just writing 3 things. And that's like my to-do list for the day. To-do lists by themselves don't motivate you. Even me, I'm a completionist, and it still doesn't make me... I enjoy checking boxes, and it doesn't do it for me. Just writing my list down doesn't by itself do it. My self-talk gets in the way, and all the distractions that are possible come crashing in, and I think about, well, I could go to the gym once I get off work, or I could just go home because that's what I really want to do. And those are those warring voices. Your self-image produces, your beliefs about yourself produce a lot of that self-talk, and you can spend time on that too if you want. Time in meditation, time reflecting on the things that you've observed about yourself. What it seems to come down to is whatever's hardest for you to do when you think about what you want to accomplish. Whatever part of that is most difficult to think about, is most difficult to imagine doing, that's probably where you need to go first. That's where your fear is blocking you off from. We all have fears. We don't all understand them. We don't understand all of them. Most of us don't understand all of them, but that's the things that you're averse to, and sometimes you don't even know you're avoiding it. But on the steps to your success, you've experienced, just like I have, obstacles, internal obstacles, where you want to do something and then you don't do it, and you just assume you didn't really want it, or you didn't want it enough, or something else more urgent came up and it sidetracked you and you never got back to it. But it's because there's specific actions you didn't take. And if you list those specific actions that you didn't do that would have gotten you what you wanted, if you're looking at that list, you can probably pick out the ones you least want to do. And you should think about, do I still want this? Or am I never going to want it enough to, it's a choice at the end of the day. You will decide whether or not you want something badly enough to achieve it. This life, we only get one that I know of, and we tend to think, well, we should accomplish something while we're here. And that's an understandable, idea. We really have to, we wake up every day. We don't want to die. We wake up every day. We live our lives, but we don't live. We don't go for it, whatever it is for you. If you're not going for it, some people would say you're not even living. I've got a family. I've got Danielle, my wife. She's sitting here with me, and we're making this podcast. That's something, and that's an experience we wouldn't have had if we hadn't sat down and actually just done it. And we could have had another day as usual where I might just play some video games and the kids are running around and they're taking turns on their systems, and we're all just we're a very video game loving family. Or maybe I read a book, maybe absorbed some more information like all the other information I've absorbed, but yet a slightly different angle. Inspiration, it comes and goes, so you can't depend on that. It's a decision. So that's what we'll keep coming back to in future episodes. Actions define us because actions, more than our thoughts and our words, work on our character on a deep level, not one easily accessed via other less tangible means. Other episodes will focus on familial topics like education, child rearing, community, homeschooling, a number of other things that relate to choices we've made differently than our parents made with us. Things we think improve our children's chances of expanding our legacy of liberty. The way we intend to set up our podcast weekly is 3 episodes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday being the self-direction related topics. Wednesday, community and anything else that doesn't fit anywhere else. And then Friday would be Family Fridays, and we'll talk on a more personal level about our experiences as a family and just anything that we think might be useful to you. The next episode is going to be on a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And we just listened to it on Audible. It's super interesting. It talks on the level of Stephen Covey about beliefs, but it gives you some additional language that we've been finding useful for making progress internally, replacing maybe bad ideas with good. And so we hope you'll tune back in for that. I realized after we were 20 minutes in that we didn't talk about ourselves at all. You don't know anything about us. I apologize for that. That information is on our website, and we'll put the about pages link in the show notes. Maybe a quick rundown. Danielle and I have been married for 15 years. We've got 9 children. We homeschool.
And we had 8 of them at home.
Right, had 8 of them at home. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
The first one, not coincidentally, was the one we had at the hospital. That was one of those pivotal experiences that kind of sent us in another direction. Well, you can read about the rest on the About page. I'll just let you do that if you care. Oh, yeah. Well, concerning our ideals.
You didn't say your name.
That's top secret. Yeah, my name's Jeremy. I'm sorry. And I guess pertinent to our ideology, we were some of those that kind of woke up to higher ideas when Ron Paul was running for president in the primaries over in the GOP 2008. We started listening to him, and that helped us kind of wake up to a lot of things that the seeds that had been planted, of course, think I already read The Law
Yeah.
at that point by Friedrich
Bastiat.
Bastiat.
Yep.
And so that kind of stuff helped us to be able to hear what Ron Paul was saying and understand it. But so that's where we got our start, and we worked for him on a couple of campaigns, and then kind of gave up on politics. And we've since been trying to find, we've been growing our family and raising our family, but been trying to find a way to move forward as individuals interested in living freer and leaving a freer place for our kids and grandkids to grow up in. And we finally realized the same thing Jason Stapleton apparently realized, that trying to get people elected is, if it worked, I think it would have worked by now. And what's much more important is that since we got one life, and it's not all that long, if you've lived half of it already, like I have, you look back, you realize how quick it's going. It's just important that we do what we can to exercise our freedoms and prosper and free our minds, so that we're setting the right example for our children, who can then do even greater things for their children, and so on and so forth. And by that, we can impact culturally, a greater and greater percentage of the population. I guess I'd only add that it's kind of conditional on you having more kids than the statists, So we got ours, all right. But most of y'all need to, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, check the About page if you're interested in that. Otherwise, hopefully you guys will check us out on the next episode. Thanks.
And if you are looking for an awesome planner this year, you should check out Panda Planner. Their planner is based on neuroscience and positive psychology. It's broken up into 3-month chunks, and it's undated. So you don't have to get 4 months in and then your plans are all messed up, or you forgot about it till the end of the year. Anyway, so you don't have to throw it away. It just keeps you focused on those 3 months. And they have some helpful videos and a guide to get you started on the first page that you can also share with your friends and family about productivity. So check that out. There will be a link in the show notes. And thank you guys for listening to our pilot episode. Wait.
As meager as it was.
So any of the things we talked about will be in the show notes, and you can check out the website. It's at raisingliberty.com. And if this helped you out, subscribe, share with your friends if you think it will help them out as well.
Praise the Lord.
All right.
All right. All right.